Welcome to the Longworth Law Firm podcast. This is Daryl Longworth, owner of the Longworth Law Firm. Here with me today is Shannon Quadros. He is the managing partner of Quadros, Meagle, and Crosby. Shannon, why don't you introduce yourself for us?
Hey, Daryl, thanks so much for having me here with you today. Again, my name is Shannon Quadros. I am the managing shareholder. That's what we call our partner shareholders. I'm the managing shareholder of Quadros, Meagle, and Crosby, based out of Houston, Texas, but we have offices in Dallas and Austin as well. We like to tout ourselves as being the real estate law firm, and with real estate comes everything with it, from entity formations related to real estate, to litigation related to real estate and construction, company businesses that, if it touches real estate, we like to do it. And, as a result, there's also every company that's of a certain size ends up acquiring property to house their business. So we help a lot of businesses form and merge and divest. And, and all things really, we even have a commercial bankruptcy practice that sometimes has to deal with both the landlord dealing with bankrupt tenant, and sometimes if a tenant client is in trouble and needs some help, they sometimes go through bankruptcy as well in restructuring. So Quadros, Meagle, and Crosby, been doing this now for just coming on 9 years now, with me being on my own. In the law firm started with me and my other partners, and it's been about 5 or 6 years now as the managing shareholder. So relatively nascent for me as a managing shareholder now.
Well, you and I met in law school, so why don't you tell our viewers what path you took after you got out of law school, leading you to this managing shareholder position we have today?
Sure. Apart from the fact that I was an evening student who had a full-time job, my law school path was otherwise very, sort of in alignment with most people's law school experience. They go to law school, they get a summer internship in their 2L, summer 2L to 3L summer. For me, it was my 3L to 4L summer because I had a 4-year path for law school because I went part-time. When I was actually doing that summer, I was able to clerk for two different law firms. One of them was a smaller but still significantly sized shop here in Houston called Nathan Summers Jacobs, which has been around for a good bit of time. They have a very strong real estate practice, a very strong litigation practice, as well as a very strong bankruptcy practice, which is quite similar to what we do in my firm here as well. But they had some excellent work related to real estate that I was able to sink my teeth into, and I really loved it. And while I was in law school, because I was a part-time student, I also worked in the real estate industry. So that's really what led me to real estate and construction law.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
you already had past experience, so it
yes, I
just
had past
lined
business
up
experience.
well.
I didn't have past legal experience, but I had business experience in the industry, and I really enjoyed it. I love all facets of real estate and construction. There's something. The joke is, we call ourselves dirt lawyers as opposed to dirty lawyers. you know, the old joke was dirty lawyers is a redundancy, and that's the joke that real estate lawyers make. But we're dirt lawyers, and we deal with very tangible things that people often take very, very personally. So I loved doing that work as a summer clerk. The second half of my summer was with the largest law firm at the time, Baker McKenzie, which in 2009 was the largest law firm in the world. They had me work on a pretty wide variety of litigation matters, but because I originally trained to be an electrical engineer in my first round of grad school back in the day, they really wanted me for their IP practice and IP group. I liked IP litigation, but I did not like patent prosecution. It was, to be honest, it felt like watching paint dry. I just did not. And it felt like being back in engineering again, which while I love the sciences, it didn't do it for me. And so I shied away from IP work and never really pursued it, even though I would have otherwise been an excellent candidate for an IP lawyer because of my background.
Sure.
That but the summer internships really told me, one, I really like litigation. I transaction work was great, nothing wrong with it, but I really enjoyed litigation, and I really enjoyed real estate related work. Um, so after my summer internships, I really vowed to myself that I really wanted to do something where I could touch that industry. But as you might know, in 2009 and 2010, it was, people hear about the bursting of the dot-com bubble, but they were very dark times for the legal market in 2009 and 2010. We had classmates who had job offers rescinded. Famously, there were some Houston area law firms that basically canceled their entire summer classes for summer interns, which was really threw a lot of people off that traditional path to get a job full time. It was quite ugly. There was quite a little bit of bloodletting. So I didn't quite get a real estate position right off the bat. I got a real estate adjacent one. Um, uh, I was able to join an insurance defense firm that was doing a lot of property damage claims post Ike. For those that don't remember, Hurricane Ike was a direct hit hurricane strike to Houston in 2008, and it did a lot of damage, and the amount of claims was tremendous. It was several $billion worth. And so the first couple of years out of law, I was basically handling a 300-400 case ICE docket and doing damage claims, insurance review related to that. So it was helpful because I did get to, cross-examine or depose structural engineers here and there, but it wasn't quite exactly what I wanted. After about 2 years, I moved to another law firm that was more traditional litigation. And there I got to sink my teeth into a little bit more in terms of construction projects and big construction projects, buildings of supermarkets, buildings of high rises and mid rises. And there I really got to sink my teeth into construction law is because I had that technical background. The partner in charge would say, "Hey, you're the engineer. Go depose the structural or go depose the expert because he's speaking this language that I do not understand, but I'm sure you get." And I really did enjoy it. I would ask them technical questions about what they did and the assumptions they made and the theory they relied on, and I enjoyed that work. And so got pretty deep into this was about my fourth or fifth year of practice deep into construction law. And at the same time, because I was a non-traditional student, I was in my early 30s at the time. I already had run a business before. I already had teams of people working under me, and I already had a decent network of people that would want to give me business. So I started to develop a small book on my own, and I realized that the only real currency, and I still say this today to anybody, the only real currency is rainmaking. You, you know, bad lawyers don't survive. So everyone has to be at least a good enough lawyer. But what separates the good enough lawyers from the successful lawyers is the lawyers that are able to attract and retain clients. And that was something because of my time in real estate and marketing and sales, I just had a natural affinity to, and so slowly but surely I started to develop a decent book of my own. And honestly, once you have your own book, it's the math ultimately is a decision maker for you. For example, if you have a client or a set of clients that will give you $100,000 a year, and if you are on your own and that $100,000 is yours, say that's yours $100,000. But typically, if you're in a law firm, especially as an associate and you're not a partner, you might only get 10%. If you're lucky, some firms don't even give you that much of that collection, even though you fully originated. And so you get to a point where you say, "Hey, my book is big enough, or it's getting close enough to be big enough that my book is teetering close enough to what my salary is, where I'm working so much harder for that because I'm working 2,000 hours to get, say, $160,000 a year, versus on the client I've originated already, that's maybe 200 hours worth of work, and that's $100,000 a year." So you get to this point where your math starts to say, "Hey, if I was on
Yep.
my own, I don't. What do I need? What do I need the law firm for?" Now this depends, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't do interstate litigation to the tune of $1 billion on your own. So you have to understand that there's certain kinds of things you need. You need breadth. You need bodies. But it's not like I would say most 50-year associates or 60-year associates are not going to be tasked with doing a bet the company litigation. So So most people figure out a point in time where it's good for them to transfer. Some people do it after they've already been partner. Lots of great litigation houses started by um, partner level lawyers who are big law firms saying, I don't want to necessarily split up my pie. Or another big issue, I don't want to deal with conflicts. Especially if you're a litigator, you're suing everybody, but your buddy down the hall who's a transactional attorney doesn't want you to sue his client that's also bringing in like $2 million worth of deals. So a lot of litigators have, by virtue of conflicts, been compelled to leave because they're leaving money on the table, turning down a lawsuit to keep their transactional partners happy. And so I think that you're seeing that in a lot of firms where litigators, sort of, it's the rise of the litigation shop because then there's no conflict because they sue everybody.
That's right.
They just sue everybody, right? And so
Yeah.
that's a big deal because conflicts are a big deal for big law firms. It's a tremendous, and a lot of really good partners have to leave lots of dollars on the table because they can't take the case because of conflict.
So, as we said before, I went to law school with you, and my path is quite different, but, we're both to the point where we started our own practice. I was working as a lieutenant with the Houston Police Department when I was in law school, and I picked up a job clerking for a family attorney. And while I was in law school, I took a marital property class with a professor who liked me. He ended up hiring me, when I got out of law school. However, trying to work two jobs, working for a law firm and myself, I'm a lieutenant with the Houston Police Department with in charge of 50 to 100 people on any given day. And then to, go in as the low person and then not be able to dedicate all that time. That was the choice that made me decide, hey, I've got to either leave the police department or leave that law firm. And for me, it was a no-brainer to stay with the police department for a period of time and hang my own shingle.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thought process I went through as well for that you went through. You were like looking at this saying, I'm making all this money for these people, but I'm not getting the return from
Right.
it. And I can do it myself. But in your situation, you already had people coming to you because of your past experience. In my case, I had to, go to judges, get court appointed work, but also I had to get marketing. And marketing is very important. So even though you talk about starting your own business because of, your book that you were developing through your past experiences and coming into contact and your sales ability, what importance did marketing play to help you grow your business when you were hanging your own shingle?
So, something someone told me recently, and I'm sure we've all heard it. We are all in sales, whether we're working behind the counter as a fry cook at McDonald's, or whether we are the CEO of an next company. We're either selling a product on behalf of someone else, or we're selling our product ourselves to our boss, to our colleagues, right? Even, you could be, say, you're a graphic designer for Marvel Studios. The sales that you're in, even though you're one of 100 graphic designers they have, the sales you're in is you're selling to your boss and your boss's boss and your team members that you are the best at X, or you are, I always say, I tell people, maybe not the most inclusive word, you got to be the guy. You got to be the blank guy. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be the guy of everything, but you got to be the best. And so I used to go further with that, graphic designer in Marvel Studios. You got to be the best face guy to draw faces, or the best muscle guy, or whatever it is for visual effects. In law, I would say you've got to be, if in family law, it's funny. I'll use the word Quadros, the qualified domestic relation orders, right? Everyone thinks actually, I'm a family lawyer because they think that's actually what I do, but because my last name is eerily similar. But those are very persnickety little things that a lot of family lawyers hate and don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. But the few lawyers that are very, very good at it, that's their bag. Like, people don't. I suspect you probably have a guy that does quadros. I don't know if that's true or not, but my past experience with people, that when you need to get someone to do that, you go to someone that you go to the specialist.
That's
I have
right.
a friend. I have a friend who's an appellate lawyer. He's the mandamus guy. People can do most of their appellate work, but when the mandamus comes into play, like, oh, we gotta. It's sort of getting the. It's sort of getting like the if you were in the hospital analogy, you gotta get the crash cart team and get the septic team, right? Because they this is what they do. They come in, but that's their signature thing, and they get a lot of work around it. So for me, marketing, I always felt, um, and this is something I learned from my days in engineering, and particularly with the, engineering. And if you think about the late '90s, early 2000s, which is when I finished grad school and finished undergrad and grad school, there was such a like boom bust cycle that, one minute you were like, yeah, you got enough money to buy a yacht. The next minute, you're surfing, you're sleeping on a friend's couch because the stock you thought was worth millions is now worth, not even the paper it's printed on. So that instilled in me to say, nothing's promised. Obviously make hay while the sun shines, but always be developing your skills and marketing it. So even as a first year associate, I always understood that ultimately getting clients and telling people, hey, this is what I do, this is what I'm doing, because your friends and your family, they want to help you. They want to help you. And I remember hearing something actually after I already graduated law school, which I wish I heard before while I was in law school, was the first year of law school was for getting good grades. The second year in law school was for getting a job. And the third year in law school was for making friends. And what that meant was making friends was your peer group is going to be the next set of judges, the next set of clients, the next set of referral sources. And I have to say, our classmates have been great because they know that generally, if they hear construction or real estate, they say, "Oh, call Shannon. That's what he does." If I have family law, which thankfully has not haunted me too much, I'll say, "Okay,
Thank
go,
goodness.
go talk to Daryl or go talk to Phil." Um, we have a classmate of ours who lives out in Sugar Land and is a municipal judge now in Sugar Land. But before she was, I would say, oh, if you got a thing in Fort Bend County, go talk to Jennifer Chang because that's where she's out. She knows the people. That's her spot. And so by just always essentially telling people who it is that you are and what it is that you do from an early it because it takes time. It's like like sowing the seeds, right? You may plant seeds one year and it'll take 2 or 3 years for it to bear fruit. But that's why you have to start now because you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to start marketing and expect something to happen 30 days from now." It takes a certain amount of critical mass for people to recognize that you just exist, to have them in your orbit, to start people thinking, "Oh, when I think of X, oh, we gotta call this person because this is they said they do this. This is what they do." And so I'm a big believer in long term marketing, planting seeds, but that's exactly it. Goes starts with a here I am. This is what I do. Keep top of mind, and I was doing that as a first year associate, and I think that actually ultimately came to save me. By the time I was a fifth or sixth year and wanting to start on my own, is because I'd already told people, this is what I do, send things my way. Let me be a trusted advisor for you. Let me help you. And if it's not me that's doing it, let me then refer you to somebody who does.
Yeah, so I mean, it's important for people to know, I think, when they're fresh out of law school trying to decide if they're going to hang their own shingle or go work for somebody. If they choose to hang their own shingle, they're going to have to develop networks, pay for a marketer like Dustin Sanchez Media to help you, but that's not going to get something fixed right away.
No.
That's something that has to be worked on over time. May take 6 months to start developing a decent book of business. Isn't that right?
So a book of business is like a six pack. You can't go work out and do 20 push-ups today and expect to be in the Arnold Classic next weekend. It's not happening. You gotta, but it is very consistent with exercise. Is that if you do it regularly, it pays off, and then you just get a point. You just hit a point one day when you wake up and like, holy moly, I got a six pack. Where did this come from, right? But it doesn't happen overnight. It's sort of it's very much like exercise. I think marketing is like exercise. You do it early and do it often, and it will come. But I mean there are things to do. I will say, um, I think everyone I don't know if I would ever be in a position to tell someone straight out of law school hang their own shingle. unless they were otherwise generally pretty sophisticated, because there's so many things to hanging on Shingle. There's the administrative side, just being the business owner. From like, do you know how to file estimated quarterly taxes? Do you know that you have to? Do you even know that you have to do that? Do you know you have to keep books, keep records? That often is very challenging for anybody, even a seasoned professional. I mean, you can have a bunch of great lawyers that have never actually operated a business in their life. For me, it was sort of the other way around. I had actually operated a business, so that was helpful for me. The administrative side didn't bother me. I just needed to get my legal chops going, and then also determining whether you can do the sort of thing you want to do in law and document malpractice. I will say, for example, the criminal defense bar is quite collegial. I've seen from both anecdotally that that they, it's quite common for them, for people to come out of law school and sort of start their own practice. They're doing lots of singles and doubles. They're not doing murder trials, but they're doing maybe, misdemeanors and, low level felonies or things like that. But that's how they get familiar. They get in front of things. They learn from their mentors. Um, I think even some transactional work could be similar, depending on the nature of it, that you might be able to do that. But I normally, and just for me, would normally recommend someone go at least for a year, work under someone in the business to get some exposure, because I always think about it. You can be smart and learn from your mistakes, but you can be brilliant and learn from somebody else's.
That's right.
And 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 if someone's already walked the path and done the heck, no need to reinvent the wheel. Go learn at the feet of people who've done it. And if you're good, they're not going to be threatened by you. If anything else, it's either an invitation to partnership, or they'll say, hey, this is how I pay it forward. Like, I don't ever feel if someone were to come to me and say, hey, I want to learn this practice, it's like, jump on. I'd love to make you an offer to come join us if you're really good. But if you want to do your own thing, I don't lose anything, because I don't see it as a zero sum game. I think, just like teaching, I only get better if I teach and I learn and I have someone push back and challenge my assumptions. So, but I think I would normally recommend for law practice, for most law practice, to spend maybe a year or two, if you can, working with or uh, under someone who's a little bit more senior. And then there's no reason, if you're a good student, that you can't then just launch on your own when you're ready.
Yeah, so you see value in starting out as an associate somewhere to learn what you want to do, and then once you get that knowledge, then move off on your own, because then you do have knowledge and you know what you're doing a lot better.
Absolutely. And I will also say this, um, as someone who's had career changes, as of we have these understandings or these notions of what law practice is like, but you might not know it unless you actually, the day to day can be very, very different. Never in a million years, if you had told me that bankruptcy lawyers are in court more often than traditional litigators are. But yeah, bankruptcy lawyers cross-examine people every other week. They're actually in court far more than most litigators are. Most litigators are actually primarily very good writers, because they're doing a lot of briefing scheduling, a lot of motion practice is really where their money's made. Um, Big litigation is neither of them. Big litigation is discovery management. If you've got a case with 100,000 documents or millions of pages of documents, the real heavy lifting is having a plan for how to manage discovery and reviewing all of it. So it's just sort of, the analogy, they call it the three games of golf, because there's the driving part, the mid range, and then the putting. But they're really three different skill sets. And just for litigation or things like that, there are different skill sets, and you may realize, you know, I really like, being in court, but I don't care to write, or I really like writing, but I don't care to be in court, or combination of the three. And you may find that your chosen area of law may not lend itself. I would honestly say, if you're not really keen on a lot of contact with people, don't ever get into family law, because you're going to have a heck of a lot of contact with people,
Yes.
and you're going to have to handhold them and be patient with them. And if that is not who you are, if you're not a terribly patient person, don't get into family law, because you're going to have to deal with a lot of feelings. And you don't know that till you kind of get in the trenches.
Yeah, yeah, family law is tough for people thinking about doing it because a lot of times, neither your client nor the other party likes you because they're dealing with a highly emotionally charged situation and it's very difficult to navigate. And a lot of times neither party is happy with the outcome. And because you can't step away from it and look at it from a rational point of view and just look at it as numbers because there's so many emotions tied into it. So somebody thinking about doing family law really needs to consider that. I think being a police officer all those years, 28 years, I was able to see people in stress and trauma time and time again. So coming into family law after that experience was probably easier for me than maybe some others because I was used to the conflict. And that's important for somebody to know going to law school. What is their skill set? Are they good at conflict? Are they good at writing, like you say? And there's a niche for you and your skill set.
So,
Question I have for you, though, what was the big change for you and any challenges you faced going from an associate attorney to being the person in charge regarding finding employees or managing employees? What were your challenges?
well, there was an interim step in between. It was being from an associate mindset to a partner mindset, and then from a partner mindset to a managing partner slash shareholder mindset. So there were slightly when you're an associate, you're sort of just a worker bee. You're the worker. You're there to sort of just do the work, get it done. When you're at the partner level, you start switching, and is what I call you're like a working manager. You are both doing the work and you're sort of um you're also pulling you're pulling you're pulling the thing along, but you're also saying I'm also directing at the same time. You say, okay, I'm rowing the boat too, but I'm also steering as well. And then usually when you get into the managing shareholder uh, portion, you're much more administrative. I still haven't left day to day law practice. I'm still very much practicing law and editing briefs and stuff. But at some point, I will have to transition as my firm goes bigger, and if I choose to do so, um, which I think will ultimately go in that direction, where I'm not, as we say, I'm working on the business, not in the business, and that's where it transitions to being more. My focus is my how I'm delivering value to the firm is by getting roadblocks out of the way, hiring the right people to do some things, streamlining it, making removing any roadblocks for us from delivering value and receiving compensation for it. So there are three different stages, and there are three very different mindsets. I will say, I think to be honest, the part I struggle with most is going into working manager was not difficult. Actually, I find um, being moving from a working partner to a managing partner be because the part of me wants to wants to jump in, and you have to force yourself to delegate. And I know you're a parent, Daryl, so I'm sure the analogy I can give you is when your child. I mean, I'm sure you've tried to teach one of your children to drive, and I emphasis on try. Uh, And so I think anyone who's done that understands that the part of you sometimes wants to just take the wheel, but you've got to let go, otherwise they will never learn. And so that has been one of my big challenges being from a working shareholder to being a managing shareholder is because I have to I have to let it they're going to go off the rails a bit, but I have to give them the opportunity to self correct and guide without trying to just jump in and save the day because ultimately I need those people to be able to stand on their own 2 feet.
Sure.
And
And
so
I took a bit
that
of
is
your advice when it came to the parenting when this driving school. I just delegated that to somebody who was trained to
exactly.
do
And
that.
sometimes it's just better to do that and put some layers in. But it can in a smaller shop it can be challenging is because particularly for me again it's like my client. It's my client that I'm delegating and I want no one can treat my client the way I treat them, right? Because they're my client, and you have to, and you do want to supervise. I'm not saying you abandon the client, but it's you have to sort of let go, and that's where you have to trust yourself. That I think Steve Jobs said, you hire smart people and you get the heck out of it. You've got to trust her. And if you can't do that, then maybe there's something wrong with your hiring process, because then you're just hiring anybody. But if you hire smart people, they will get it done.
Now, it's important for people to know that being a lawyer, managing shareholder, or associate can be stressful. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, unequivocally, that was very challenging, especially my first few years of practice. Very challenging.
And what do you do to help cope with that stress? Do you have any daily habits that you like to do to help get you through and help you manage your business better?
So one thing I will say was also a mind shift change. Something I had to repeat to myself practically in the mirror for about a year or two before it sunk in, was telling myself I am not allowed to care about my case more than my client. Because sometimes you will find clients. I was always so gung ho about my cases. I was like, it was always a great tragedy if anything would happen, and my client would be like, yeah, okay, that happened, and I realized, oh, I definitely should not care for it more than my client does. And at the same time, sort of the reverse is also true. Your client may care about something to the extreme, but you cannot jump on that roller coaster too. The point your client is hiring you to be clinical and clear and say, hey, and it's hard. I can't imagine how family lawyers and criminal defense lawyers do this, because if the prospect of saying, hey, to my clients, hey, I couldn't get your child for you, or hey, you're going to be in jail for 30 years. I can't fathom that. That is a tremendous thing. I'm like, I don't know how I could look someone in the face, even though that was the valid result. It's so challenging. Um, but but understanding, I think so much of it is mindset to say, hey, I'm doing the job I can. I'm doing the best as long as I'm doing it to the best of my ability. Then I can sleep well at night. So a lot of it was mindset, but a daily thing that I in some fashion, except perhaps maybe one day a week, I try and either, or both, I try and either get about 45 minutes of cardio in and about 20 to 30 minutes of weight training, at least 5 or 6 days a week if I can. This wasn't the case earlier, and because it wasn't the case earlier, I was very unhealthy the first couple of years out of law school. I think most I was in actually great shape in law school because I would go work out every morning, and even during bar prep, as a means to cope with stress, I would work out every morning and had some schedule flexibility. But when I became a first year associate, I was in the office 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and you just sort of never saw the sun, nothing. It was very, very unhealthy. And I realized that is not sustainable. But again, it's hard, I know, for lots of young associates to feel like they had any agency, which is one of the biggest reasons that made me want to have my own shingle, is because I wanted some self actualization of my time. I really didn't want to be a rented slave. And actually, I would say that was the biggest push for me to have my own shop, or or to be part of my own shop, where the only person that I really answered to was the brown fella in the mirror, because um, I realized that um, if you let it happen, it's very easy to have the golden handcuffs and be working 2,800 hours a year, and yeah, you'd be on your third Porsche, but you'd be on your fifth wife and your children's 8 children, right?
Yep.
And I say I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I have to say I'm fortunate that I was able to develop a book, but for me that is probably the biggest. It was not even monetary. The biggest reason for me wanting to switch to partner into the partnership and get to the point where I developed my own book for partnership was to have control over my life so that I could actually take care of myself, because it doesn't take much to have it doesn't take much to have a heart attack. It doesn't take much to if you we're paid to sit and not move in sunless rooms that none of those things are healthy for us. And so if you don't do something to counter that, that's not good. So again, trying to work out every day. I generally will say, except for when I'm on the eve of trial, I really don't work weekends. Actually, a recent trial was the first time. Oh gosh, working on a Saturday, it seemed alien. But when I was an associate, that was a regular thing. But again, because I had agency over my life, I can do that. So it was, when I'm home, I'm home. I try and leave work at the door. My children do give me a hard time that I'm always on my phone, but I said this phone call is going to pay for Disney in like 3 months. So
Okay, take the
I'm
phone
billing for
call
this.
back.
I'm billing for this. So yeah, I'm having to take this call at 6:30 p.m. right now, and I haven't started dinner yet. But hey, this is paid for Disney, so just but bear with me. And and they but they did used to give me a hard time of always being on my phone. Sometimes just checking things. But they understand that I also have the flexibility, like unlike some many parents, is that, for example, my kids they have some like a sports day at school. I can go at 10 in the morning and burn 3 hours, and barring a hearing or some scheduled thing like that, no one's really going to be able to tell me anything, say no. But when I was an associate, you can't just say, hey, partner, I'm gonna go have lunch with my spouse because I haven't really seen her for 3 weeks,
Yep.
or hey, I'm gonna go take my or have a sick day. A lot of people don't have that luxury, and that's really, to me, when you start your practice, that is, to me, that's the priceless. That is worth millions of dollars because I can never get that back.
Yeah, in order to be successful long term, you have to have balance, like you're saying. So, if you're in a position as an associate where you're not allowed to have that balance because of the requirements of the job, it's really tough on you to maintain that long term.
Hmm. And I think when I was my my kids were born when I was about 2 years out of 2 years practicing for my a little bit longer, about 4 or 5 years practicing into my practice. And I know your kids were a little older by the time I think they were teenagers when you were in law school. But you know this to be true as well. For me, it was particularly important. Is they're only going to be young ones. They'll be adults for the rest of their life, but they're only going to be 13 or 10 or 8 months. And I said to myself, I'm making good enough money. Unfortunate, I could work harder, but let me enjoy this period now because by the time they're 13 and doing extracurricular activity, they're not going to want to talk to old man anyway. And so then
You
I
don't
can
know
work harder.
anything.
Yeah, then I can work harder and pay for the $1 billion undergrad education cost that I'm going to have to be dealing with. Because anyway, they don't really want to hang with me, but let me have the opportunity to hang with them now while they still want to hang out with their old man. Because at some point they're just going to be doing their own thing, and then if I want to work 10 hours a day, I can do it. But that for me, I think I'm certain I will look back and say, thank goodness I I was able to do it because at the time already. I mean, even the time goes by so quickly. Um, and next thing you know, you blink of an eye, your kids are grown, or you may have a parent and they were ambulatory and much more alive, and now they're older, and they may not, and then you wish, oh, I wish I had spent, I wish I took that trip to the baseball stadium in Chicago or
Yep.
with my father while he could. Now he's in a retirement community, doesn't really get out of the room, and you can't go backwards, right? And so, I think we've seen it even. I will say we've actually had, you may know, we had a classmate pass away after she graduated. We've had, I've friends in law school whose spouses have passed away or children have, you know, what are we doing this all for? I mean, I love helping people. It's great, but I'm also here to a life, live a life and fully, fully while I can. Money is
Yeah, I
great.
think
That's wonderful, but yeah,
Yeah, I think that's great advice because you're going to work hard trying to improve your career and make your business successful, but you only have so many summers, as that song says. So you got to get out there and be present with the family and do things while you're still growing your business. Otherwise, you'll get to a point where you can't do any of those things, like you say. You'll be in the retirement home, or you may not even be here if you wait too long. So that's very great advice about the balance and being present with family and doing those activities when you can, when you're able. And don't get so wrapped up in your business that you forget about your life with your family as well. When you
yeah.
say that would be a fair thing to tell people.
Absolutely. I think it is that know what's really important, and again, a time and place for everything. If you have an opportunity to, and it may be a limited time. Say, hey, and you even have a discussion with your family. Say, hey, look, I may have to just grind it out for 2 or 3 years, but then I will be set, and I'm doing some short term pain to have access for the longer term. and make that conscious decision, make aware. But I think people get so easily caught up in in that hamster wheel, and then they can't get off the golden handcuffs, right? They have this lifestyle creep, and suddenly they're in the house with a $1.5 million mortgage that they don't really even ever see, and kids that don't want to talk to them. And then you're like, what did I do this for? I would have been happier in a $300,000 house where I'm coaching little league, and actually at the end of the day, like we say, what is riches, right? Or how do we define happiness? And I think that is, and it's hard. I think when you're a younger person, you don't, you do, because time is on your side, generally speaking. You don't have an appreciation of that. And I think that was one of the great joys of being slightly older, going to law school. I had a little bit of perspective of it because you see, I think I used to see people in the meat grinder of it, and I'm like, what are they doing this for? Who are they doing this for? Is this really, what is this really all for? What is their end goal here? What are they doing this for? And again, I don't begrudge anyone else doing that for themselves if that's the right decision for them. But for me, it wasn't. For me, I wanted something slightly different. So no one's ever going to hear, 50 years from now, no one's going to say, "Oh, there goes Shannon. He had that $7 billion verdict." I'm not. I'm not. I will. I hope I'm that guy, but I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna be that guy because that requires a certain something, and then that's fine. But I think I can say is, I will have the opportunity to have a very meaningful life, and even my work is not meaningless here. I have a lot of great people, and a lot of the businesses I'm helping now. It's amazing. um, there's some businesses that I've started around the same time as our firm has started. And they were two-man, like, I have a lot of architectural clients and engineering clients. And they were two-man shops 6 years ago, sort of like how we were 6 years ago. And now they're 10 people, 10 person shops now. And they're growing their business, and they're getting international awards and things like that. And it's funny because I talk to those principals of those companies and say, hey, remember when we were all just like banging on the wood at startup, and look at you now, you're making some big things. But that's where they all started. You know, Baker Botts didn't start as a 700-person law firm on day one. Fulbright and Jaworski was, all these, they didn't start like that. They all started from smaller things, and they just grew with time and diligence, and they turned. So, all I can say is, watch this space in 20 years. Let's see where we're at.
That's
Um,
right.
and I'm looking forward to
And then, is there any last bit of advice you'd give a law school student? Something maybe like what law school did wrong or what they did right, or something they should be looking to do while they're there?
Well, I will repeat what I said earlier for law students is that in your 1L year, your number one and only job is get the best darn grades you can. Because it's sort of the analogy is if you're on a roller coaster, the first leg of the roller coaster, they take you to the top of the mountain, and then gravity takes care of everything. The higher your grade, the better it sets up that potential. Then it's just smooth sailing downhill from there we are. So the
Yep,
higher the grades you get, it tends to get everything else in line. You get high grades, you tend to get below review. You get high grades, you tend to get job offers, and then that's really the next step, right? Year two is so year one, get the good grade. Year two is to get the good job to set you up. Get a good job that you got the pick of your litter of which law firms or groups you want to join. And once you set that up, and in year three, connect with your friends. Your peer groups are everything. These are the people that will come help you in a bind. These are the people you call and say, hey, do you have a template I can borrow? Or hey, do you know of a case? Or hey, can you walk me through this? Hey, I know you're the specialist in this. Can you walk me through this? That networking, because just again, like we have classmates that are now judges. We have and I think you're going to find more and more as the days go on. We'll have classmates that were working in government and being assistant undersecretaries here and there. You will have classmates that are going in house that are going to be clients, um, that will send us work, that will refer. I mean, 99% of my cases come from other attorneys. I almost get no direct consumer clients to me. I get them from other attorneys. That is overwhelmingly it. And so I would tell law students to do that. And also, I would say to law students to say it's the long game. Like take care of yourself, do what you can to preserve your health, and exercise or do something that you do as a practice for yourself, and make that just part of who you are, because your long-term health is actually your only real net value. Because you can be the best lawyer in the world, if you're having a triple bypass by the time you're 41, what does it matter, right? Or if you're 700 pounds and your knees hurt just to walk to the kitchen, that's nowhere to be. So take care of your health, and if you take care of yourself and take care of your health and maintain those relationships, and understand there's a big picture, then I think you will tend to go further. You may not go as fast as you'd want, or maybe some of your friends, but those things burn out early. But if
That's
you
right. Be the
there's no
turtle, not the hare.
Yeah, because it's true. Like you see, some of the most successful attorneys we see now, when we look back and like, oh gosh, they've been practicing for 40 years, but because they've just been able to stick around. I would say half of law is just survival. Just just live to fight another day, and tenure will learn you will learn something, and just stick around. If you can stick around, I will say this, I really don't think there are any poor, starving attorneys who've been in practice.
Yep. Well, Shannon, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. We sure do appreciate all this valuable advice you've given to others. You've come from it, a unique perspective. You have longevity, you have wisdom, and we really do appreciate it. It was a pleasure catching up with you again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Daryl, and this is wonderful. Thank you.
And thanks to our viewers. This was the Longworth Law Firm podcast. Until next time, this is Daryl. Have a great day.